analyze? Are you looking for real data to analyze? An actual problem to solve? An experience worth talking about in an interview? Well, in this case study course, you get a real-world problem with a messy data set and a business outcome that's on the line. My name is John David, and I'm the founder of Silvertone Analytics, a boutique consulting agency that focuses on business analytics. I'm also a professor of analytics at Greensboro College. And in 2021, I had the privilege of combining these two worlds. My real-world Greensboro College students got to work with my Silvertone Analytics clientele for the Analytics Minor Capstone course at Greensboro College. This case study course is modeled after the lessons, the trials, and the tribulations that my students went through in the Analytics Minor Capstone course. My students got to work directly with the president of an organization that is clearing over $150 million in revenue every year. And this case study course keeps the exact same data structures that they worked through in that case study. But I anonymized the data to protect my client's privacy. So are you ready to solve a real-world business use case, build a killer analytics portfolio, and even learn how to communicate these findings in an interview setting? Well, click the Take This Course button now and join me inside. Ash, how's it going, man?
Hey, good day, happy Friday.
So we're experimenting with our own ads now, which is new, because YouTube is just not paying out at all. They just slashed the commissions.
Yeah. You know what? I support you. You got to do what you got to do. Everyone's got to earn their bread, and you know what? That's a really good ad. I think it's really cool. You got to work with your students like that. I did teach a data analytics boot camp at UC Berkeley a few years ago, and one of the things that I really that I didn't have in that program that I wish I had was some kind of like formal way to work with my students after the fact. So unofficially, continue to kind of talk with them and help them through building experience and skills and interviewing and so on. But what you're doing sounds cool.
Yeah, well, I haven't talked about this on air much, but I'm trying to build an analytics scene in Greensboro. So some of my former students, some of the podcast super fans, and then just people I know in the industry, we're going out to get dinner and drinks once a week, once every other week. So I'm trying to build a cohesive community, which is I don't know anyone else is doing that, at least not in North Carolina. Probably in some of these major cities, it's much more common.
Yeah, I think bringing people together is really valuable. It's valuable for professional development. Talking with other people in the field. I mean, all said and done, even though it's a growing exploding field, it still isn't I can't talk to my siblings and cousins and talk data analytics and everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about, or even approximately what I'm talking about. So I feel the community is really helpful.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think also too, it's kind of this servant leadership kind of trope I'm trying to embody of getting out in the community, and it's uncomfortable meeting new people. So if I can kind of facilitate that. Oh, interesting. So we've got Matt Bratton chiming in. So Abe Diaz is in the back end of our studio. We're going to bring him in a minute to critique his portfolio. But what's funny is I keep doing this. For those of you who are listening, me and Ash have never talked. He logged in 2 minutes before, and now we're just hitting play.
Yeah, we're doing our hellos here.
Yeah, so you guys are getting in on this as we're meeting and getting acquainted with each other, which is wild. Because so I met you because Ken G referred me to you because you came on his podcast.
Yeah, I was on his podcast. I want to say a couple of months ago, and that was a really fun one. I mean, I've kind of been following the data science content creation scene. But what you guys are doing on there is, I think, really value add, right? On YouTube, you're helping people really think about how to become a better data analyst and how to navigate the industry. And there's a lot of value there.
Okay, all right. So I've got to tag this this live chat. So this is an emerging thing that we're developing. So my intern just spun up a Discord server for us, and we're doing a weekly data challenge. And one of the networking events, I went with some of my former students. I ran into Tim, who he runs the Code for Greensboro challenge. So it's like civic hackathons. So what we're doing is we're trying to combine these worlds of like having people on our podcast study Greensboro's civic data to come up with useful dashboards. So like citizens can sift through that data to find insights. So Tim's saying, speaking of building the analytics community here in Greensboro, any local folks on the chat now considering coming and join the Code for Greensboro? Happy hour tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. in Odin Brewery. So there you go. It's happening in real time. This wasn't planned. This is just spontaneous. Odin's a really cool brewery that's relatively new in town. So if there are any local folks, I'm just finding out about this. So yeah, Tim, send me a message off air and let's connect on this. I'd love to come meet some of those people.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I'm totally into like working with open data. I'm a huge nerd for like traffic data, crime data. I don't know, all the like interesting but also weird kind of government stuff that is invisible but necessary to run a city.
So okay, have you ever heard of open data applying directly to private business?
Yeah, in some cases, yeah. I mean, so when I worked at the electric scooter company Lime, we had to use open data for because the scooters were kind of like out there in the real world, and so we had to use a lot of like third-party data and open data for like mapping and trying to predict like where foot traffic falls and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Because what we're thinking about doing with our learning platform is just opening up our data sources to anyone who wants to study it. Because that seems like one of the biggest problems that I see, like I experienced back like 5-6 years ago when I was trying to get my first analytics job, was that I didn't have any real data to work with. It was like all this packaged up, like Sally has $10 to spend on groceries this month, like the rinky dink, like cookie cutter data sets.
Yeah, there's only this much you can get out of like building analytics on, I don't know, like the Iris Petals data set or whatever, right? Like you got, I think those are really good as like toy problems, but yeah, you're right. Like if you're a single data analyst, industry outsider, like the power imbalance on like who's got the data is like totally against you. Like big corporations own like the most useful data. They don't own all of it, and they don't own like all the interesting problems, but like a lot of them are in the private sector right now.
Yeah, well, I think that us putting out our data, and I mean we were talking about like our Google Analytics data, our email marketing, our sales data, our social media data, like everything out there. And then basically if people want to come solve problems for ourselves, like we may do challenges where it's like, all right, everyone compete. The person who wins this challenge gets paid as a consultant. You get like $1,000 or $5,000 or how much ever. So that way it's like kind of low risk on our end, but like the upside seems high. I'm a little bit worried about the competitors coming in and scalping our data and being like, they're here. But I mean, I don't know if it's a company that's built around like a personal brand, and it's kind of there's a little bit of a hedge against competition in those situations.
Well, I think what you're doing is kind of like open sourcing software, right? Like on the like the obvious con of open sourcing software is that everyone can see your code and can copy it and like also use it for their own purposes. I think it's a similar thing with data, except you can't like reuse the data. Like, if I'm starting to use your channel, I probably can't reuse your data to my benefit much. I could study it to learn like kind of some of the dynamics that I don't know. But there are pros to open sourcing your data. It's like you'll get, it's way easier to get people to work on something. If you want to get a lot of people working on your problem, like open sourcing is like a really good way to do it.
Well, okay, so we're totally going on a side tangent here, and I hope I'm not boring my audience too much, but it's the network effect. Yeah. It's because this is a social platform. Like if I like touch enough people and have an impact on their life, there's some like brand equity, there's some loyalty in that. And I'm kind of paying it forward to where they're willing to pay kind of in the long term. Because like one thing because I'm published on LinkedIn and Udemy, and one thing that I'm realizing is like so many of these organizations are just in a race to the bottom. Like they want to chart, like Udemy's, everything's on sale all the time. So therefore your like $200 course price is, because everyone knows it's $9.99, which is it's an interesting space. But I feel bad. I feel like we're neglecting our chat here. I saw.
What's going on in the chat? Let's get folks in.
Yeah. All right. So we got. This is cool. So John Weininger is the analytics manager at Home Depot. So he's warning you. I may ask some clever questions.
I see. I'll be prepared.
But and then let's see who else. See, what's tough about this live chat is that there's so many people asking questions. All right. So Tuan, this is not the case study course is related to Tableau and marketing analytics. I do have that course on Udemy, just focusing specifically on that Power BI certification, but it's completely separate. Let's see. I think I saw. All right, Kinga, I owe you a response. I just saw your question on one of our other podcast episodes with Gary Fly. So I will get back to you, I promise. But cool. All right, so let's pivot now. And I want to ask you about, you have such a impressive career trajectory. So like Line, I know Line, it's weird like that. Well, to be quite frank, those Lime scooters were littered all over my city for like 6 months. I'd love to see the data on that. But I've been working there, and that's like a name, highly visible company. And then I'd love to hear about what it was like working for LinkedIn.
Yeah, for sure.
And then kind of like, what are your thoughts on career trajectory? So I guess let's start. So what did you study in school, and did you feel like that prepared you for the job market?
So I let's see. I dropped science, so like physics, chemistry, and biology in high school, and picked up like business, accounting, econ, and math. And I kind of continued to study economics in university. And I would say that no, it did not prepare me to get into a career in data analytics. I knew a lot of math when I graduated. I had no idea how like data work in the real world. And importantly, I had a very, very basic idea of how computers work. I mean, like I've been working with computers my whole life. I'm a gamer. I've really like tinkered around and hacked a bunch, but I mean, that's just basically like a platform on which to build more advanced skills, and it's not like, gonna make you industry ready. So that's what I studied.
Okay. It was funny because my undergrad was in economics as well, and I had zero skill. Although I was super privileged and not taking school seriously. So my parents paid for my undergrad. So I know I'm extremely lucky that, I came from that place. But then I flailed in a 100% commission sales role for 3 years. And then went back on my own dollar and paid for an MBA with concentration in analytics and took it much, much more seriously.
Right on. So you had this kind of moment in your professional life where you decided, all right, I gotta, reinvest in building new skills.
Well, okay. This is a bit of a controversial hot take, but I joke with my students all the time about this of like, you guys are really comfy right now, but you are on the verge of your quarter life crisis. Because you're going to get out and you're going to like your expectations for how things are going to go and the reality are just like not synced up.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. There's a lot of kind of like just mildly shocking surprises about how the industry works and getting in day-to-day life. So I kind of get where you're coming from there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I came from like a very pampered place to like 100% commission where I was knocking on 20 business doors a day and just getting rejected. It was almost like, I know we got Al, our social media manager, and Abe, who are military people. It's almost like my version of boot camp where they like broke me down and then I had to build myself back up. It's like someone who actually has assumptions and ideas grounded in reality. So you don't have a master's degree.
No, I don't. Well, not yet, at least. I've considered going back to school. Yeah, I think when it was most opportune for me to do it, I unfortunately wasn't able to afford it. And now I think the opportunity cost is too high for me, where, I think I'd grow a lot more just by staying in the industry and picking up more responsibilities and new opportunities.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like you're already getting the jobs that most people go to get a master's to get, right?
Yeah. So I've talked with like more senior data scientists about this, and kind of got some advice on both sides. I mean, there's a lot of good in spending more time like studying field seriously. If I went back to school, I'd probably take a mix of technical and soft skill type of courses. My ideal would be something like like a master's in stats, but also in like business or management, if at all that's a thing. But again, like I said, I mean, I really I think I should be able to get that kind of like skill development in my professional life if I am able to get in front of the right opportunities.
So this is an interesting debate that actually, Daniel Hall is now the dean at High Point University, which I live in Greensboro. High Point is like 30 minutes away. And I taught for him last semester and the semester before that. But we were talking, this was an interesting conversation. So it was me, who's an entrepreneur, and my friend Ryan, who's also an entrepreneur. And on the other side of the argument was Dr. Hall, and then Raj, who's getting a PhD in geology. And we're talking about the benefits of going directly from undergrad to grad school. And he was saying that it's a good idea because it will make your career trajectory much steeper. Like you'll kind of start off getting underpaid, but then as you get into promotions, it'll kind of build on top of itself. It sounds like you're kind of like debunking that. Like you kind of like bootstrapped your way up without that master's degree.
Well, yeah, true. I didn't go back to school and get a master's degree. But I mean, I put in like 2 or 3 years of like just working nights and weekends to build the skills. So I would say, although I don't have I probably didn't do exactly the equivalent of a master's degree, but between that and picking up work experience, I found that was enough to get me into the industry.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like you've got demonstrated performance. So like you've done well and kind of leveled up each career pivot, right?
Yeah, that all started at Lime. To be honest, the first 5 years of my career, I was just kind of like a spreadsheet analyst, and I spent most of the time working at like a small e-commerce company out in Colorado. And I was working with all sorts of data that they had. They had like a lot of transactional, typical like e-commerce type of data, a lot of inventory type problems, and they also had like any e-commerce store marketing, which is like a big source of their inbound traffic. And I was working with all of this data, but it was small, so I didn't really need to. I mean, I got by for at least a couple of those years just using Excel. And I think it was actually on that job where I started to encounter problems where it's not like Microsoft Excel is just not going to cut it. You've got like files that you can't open up because you're just you don't have enough RAM in your local computer to open up a 20 gig file if you have 16 gigs. I'm like, yeah.
I found that it's right around the 60,000 row mark. It starts to really start to lag on Excel. Maybe it was just a computer I was on though.
Yeah, it's something like Excel. The original, I don't know exactly what it's like now, but it used to be 65,000 something. It's it's a 2 to the power off number that's rooted in some kind of the computing capacity of your device.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
See, yeah, you're way more. You're like our intern Hunter, who is a gamer. He knew about Discord. I'm finally starting to feel like an old man, where I'm like, what are the kids doing these days? What's this Discord thing? It's super. Well, what's funny is Discord just doesn't look aesthetically pleasing to me. It's I don't know. It just
it's kind of a mess, but I kind of love it. It's a beautiful mess.
All right, so we got a viewer submitted question here from Kevin from Home Depot again. So John's top question is, what's your typical day in the life?
what's the mix of data engineering, defining the problems, building the models, testing the results, summarizing your findings, and communicating out results?
So yeah, that's a really good question. We just scroll back up to find it. Actually, would you mind putting it back
yeah,
up?
I'll just pull it back up.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
So yeah, like let's start with day in the life.
Okay.
So I'm gonna come at this from like a tech industry perspective. I've worked in both startups and like kind of like established companies now, and if I could, like one really frequent and common experience in the life is lots of questions. So typically your role is not like you working alone, kind of like how a lot of people get into data science, like studying by themselves. It's very much you're embedded in a particular part of the organization you work in. So for instance, at Lime, I was building global fleet analytics that would tell market managers in cities like what percentage of their fleet needed to be recharged or repaired or relocated to areas of higher demand. At LinkedIn, I was working on product analytics for LinkedIn Learning, where I was I was working on a specific part. I worked a lot on their sign up. I'll just cut the long story short there. When you create an account and you go through that flow, like I spent about a year like staring at that flow.
LinkedIn Learning has been wild. It's so I've had like 500,000 people take my LinkedIn Learning courses over the past 2 years. Like the scale of that is
hard. That's really good, man.
It's hard to wrap my head around, and I'm actually flying back out to Santa Barbara to go record again in I think 6 weeks from now.
Oh, that's so much. Yeah, their studios out there are great, and I never got to visit, but like I've had Zoom calls with folks there. It's enviable.
It's weird. It's reading from a teleprompter. Sorry, side tangent. But
okay. Okay. So and here at Atlassian, I work. Atlassian is a company that makes collaboration tools like Jira, Confluence, Trello is what I think a lot of people.
Okay. I know Trello.
I work in marketing analytics at Atlassian and help the teams I work with optimize a ton of automated campaigns that they run. So in all of these, like the commonality, the day in life is the people you're working with, they have a lot of questions. It's like, think about it as like, let's say you're working with someone, like, let's say you own a restaurant and, so you can see every customer. And if you make a change, you can see how like, you get some feedback, right? Like you can just observe people and learn a lot from them. It's kind of like that, but with like internet technology products, you don't get to directly observe how people are responding to changes that you make. So let's say you change something up on the menu, or you increase prices, or you change the decor. It's not as straightforward to just walk around and like ask people, hey, how are things going? So this is where like I think I find myself in data analytics, just feeling those questions of like, hey, so we're thinking about making this change. Is it worth it? Are enough people going to be impacted that we'll get what we want out of it? Things are like less than straightforward, and so that's like the biggest feature of everyday questions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and see, that's another thing too. Sorry if I'm like high fixated on like the online course creation space, but one of the big challenges I see is that you also have perfect data sets. Like there's no conception in a lot of college classes on scarcity of like you have this data set and it's a perfect crystal ball of what's going on. So like having the conversation around like, all right, well, we have to make some assumptions about this data. What is going on here, and what are the risks of making this assumption? Is this going to cause $1 million under optimization in our supply chain? Like what are the risks associated with this?
Yeah, so some problems can be really high stakes, and maybe not even the ones you expect. Like some changes you want to make, you really just have to like run an experiment and see what happens, because it's really hard to predict what will happen. You can theorize, you can hypothesize, but like at the end of the day, our technology products these days are like really complicated. There's its unintended consequences. If you're testing a button with blue text, someone's probably testing a button with blue background. And if those two tests collide, then you got a user who just sees a blue button with no text. And like that's the kind of like world we live in. So I would say part of the question is, so before we get in the data, part of it is there are so many questions. So you're talking about scarcity. The real scarcity that we face in the industry is too many questions and too few people to answer them. So the most important thing I do every day is try to talk with the people who are asking questions to understand, well, what are you trying to use this question to decide? And is that the most important thing we could be working on? Or, can we agree that this other thing is more important and I should be focusing my limited time, my scarce time on this, researching this question?
Okay, so you're sparking some ideas in my head of this concept that is really hard for me to express and communicate to people who have never worked, especially students who are so green. This concept of systems versus ad hoc thinking. Like if you can define, because that's essentially I don't work. My clientele for my consulting agencies, the largest company I've worked for is 150 million in revenue. So they're around the tens of millions. So they're not huge. So it's funny because it's just wide open in terms of a lot of them have never had a data analyst come in. So there's a bunch of low hanging juicy fruit, but the first breakthrough I had, or the first big win in terms of analytics, my analyst career, was taking a system that did line reviews for manufacturer. They did it manually in Excel. What I did was I figured out a system to pull those data sources into Tableau, and all you have to do is just update the underlying data, and then it automatically populated. So that scaled out 17 times. And then we just started iterating from there. And that was the first real inflection point of oh, wow, this is worth millions of dollars.
You feel like a superhero, you discovered some new powers.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's you're a superhero, but it's also too I know that these people are selling physical goods in North Carolina, so they're they're not the Googles or the Lime or the Facebooks or the LinkedIn's of the world.
You don't have to be, man. You can add value anywhere. I feel that's one of the cool parts of getting into data analytics. Lots of places are big enough to have big data problems. You don't need to be working in cutting edge of technology. So sorry, side note, but you could be selling widgets. You could be like Nike. If you sell enough shoes, you need data to figure out how many shoes to manufacture each line, and where and when the demand's going to spike, so you can have the inventory ready. Your distribution channel is all tech anyway. Logistics and delivery these days is all really hyper optimized.
Yeah. Well, see, and honestly, I think so. I'm kind of pivoting out of the consulting. The work that I want to do, I think long term, is just facilitating students working for organizations, because I think that's really where the biggest learning happens. Is you're not going to get paid to solve a problem. You're not going to get paid to solve the Titanic data set problem, because everyone on Kaggle or wherever has done that.
Right.
But if it's all right, this company is having this one data, the benefit of working with these companies is these stories are so obvious. For example, this is just one of the easiest anecdotes I can tell you is I had a company that was selling marine accessories, and they were holding their inventory flat all year. There was a $350,000 under optimization in terms of no one's buying marine accessories during the wintertime. Invest that capital in something that's selling and moving. So that's a super easy, right? But if I were in LinkedIn, talking about the whole complexity of it, it would be a lot harder, I think, to convey those concepts to students.
I'd be happy to talk about that. I mean, going back to John's question here, day in the life, as I was getting, what I was getting to is basically fielding questions is the biggest part of my day. Trying to ask questions about what we get out of it and what it's going to cost me or my team or the organization to get it. So the questions can be, to give you an example, I work in the marketing department now. There's probably a handful of campaign managers in my inbox right now, trying to figure out how trying to make decisions about specific campaigns they run. Meanwhile, their management, 1 or 2 levels of them, it's the beginning of the fiscal year, so they're trying to set like high level strategic targets, and they have like an entirely different set of questions. And finally, there's like apart from all the questions that these folks have, there is a need in the organization to build a really good campaign attribution. So we actually have to kind of somehow bat away enough of these questions, make enough time to build this foundational stuff, so that we, like, because that's like the biggest value add. That's the like, in the example you mentioned, that's the $350,000 optimization. That's where like the real opportunity lies. But in the meantime, like everyone also needs to kind of like have enough information to make their decisions, and that's where like like the human problem lies in analytics.
Well, okay, I did want to circle back around because you mentioned soft skills, which I think that the two big things that I'm realizing, like the two big like pie in the sky things, is I'm trying to teach technical people business and business people technical stuff. So that's like the value prop. But then also too, people who are super technical need to understand the soft skills, because that if you're the type of person who's fixated on things and concepts, you're good there. Like you're going to tinker and you're going to be fixated there. But what may limit your career is that you can't articulate and get buy-in on your project. You can't sell yourself in an interview. You're going to get capped real quick in terms of your career progression if you don't develop those soft skills.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It totally depends on the environment that you work in, but like most kind of institutional environments are, I mean, they're ultimately team efforts. They're collective social endeavors. The sum of the parts is greater than the whole. You got to recognize you're on a team. So it's kind of like if you were playing football, you could be like really like the best quarterback. You could understand like the physics of how to throw the ball and how to get it to like the right runner. But at the end of the day, if you pass to the wrong person, or you haven't really thought about how to like communicate to your teammates that while something's going on, you have to like they have to do something, then you're just like less effective. So I feel like that's the analogy I would use for soft skills and why they're important. It's not just enough to throw the ball. You got to like figure out how to talk with your team too, and like contribute what they need.
And okay, let me do the improv thing of yes and. So I agree. I love that metaphor, but I also think that you need to understand like what's the goal. Are you going for a Hail Mary play, or is this like you're trying to move the ball forward 3 yards? Yeah. Because I that's really where I geek out is business strategy. Like that's I like kind of seeing like, all right, if we do this, what's going to happen? And for me, honestly, the analytics hard skills are kind of an afterthought. It's like it's like the minimal effective dose of like I know enough to be dangerous, and I also know enough that I can bring in a data scientist and be like, hey, build out a linear regression or predictive model for this, and that this is why this will be important.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point there. I feel like so business strategy is really it's an area with like a lot of high value potential. And yeah, like, so I want to touch upon this because you said like the technical skills are almost an afterthought. I feel like this might confuse some people because when you're trying to get into the industry, everyone's like, your technical skills gotta be solid. This is like really the most basic requirements that you need to meet in order to be in data analytics or data science. Mm-hmm. And that's true. But once you get in, you really have to work on this other stuff that like it's just harder to work on it outside of a workplace environment because you need a team to work on team skills.
Yeah. Or, okay. So this is what's cool about this podcast is that I'm just bringing in people and then I'm just taking their ideas. I mean, I'll give them attribution. I'll be like, this is this person's idea. But we had this guy who just got we interviewed. What's funny is I reached out to him because he was interviewing for his first business intelligence role at Amazon. And by the time he came on, he had just landed the role. His name was Jay Swano. And one of the things that he did is he started his own nonprofit. So he learned, like they were selling toothbrushes that like would benefit some environmental cause. So like he learned like, okay, marketing, sales, business structure. And I think those are the things that really shine through and like are impressive in an interview setting. Because like, yeah, he did go through a boot camp and like he had the technical skills, But I think, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. People lean too heavily on those technical skills without the context of what's going on.
Yeah, once you're done talking with people and getting alignment and make sure everyone agrees that we're working on the right thing, then you got to go into the cluster and then put like, you know, your hundreds of gigs or terabytes through whatever like I don't know, like compute environment you've got, and hopefully you got like really good resources, and hopefully everything breaks, and I mean, hopefully nothing breaks.
Everything breaks.
Hopefully nothing breaks, and you know, all the data sources you assumed were high quality remain high quality, and you know, there's no bugs in your code, and you know, you understand how everything works perfectly. So I feel like there's a lot underneath that iceberg, but I think really like it starts with you know, figuring out where you slot it in the team.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Okay, let's see. Let's tap the chat. I feel like it's so tough.
Oh,
I want to give you my full attention, but then I also need to moderate this.
Yeah.
And like, because I don't want to neglect my people, you know, like these
no,
people
do your thing.
Okay. All right. So, okay, let me give you some context of Kinga. So she is pivoting out of the academia space and getting her first analytics job. And it's interesting seeing her. Like, she's very active on LinkedIn. I can see kind of like her thought process. And pro tip to those who are listening: be active on LinkedIn. Don't overshare. Don't be like, hey, I had a bad day. My dog died. Like, don't overshare, but like, you can talk about struggles that are relevant to kind of your career. So Kinga asks, I keep seeing that in the tech space, people jump roles every 1 to 3 years. What do you think that is? I have thoughts on this too, but I'll let you go first.
Sure. I mean, I have a particularly like sort of econ way of thinking about this. So ultimately, we're in so this technology industry has like this business model where the marginal cost of delivering most products, meaning you know, if you come to my store and buy like a pair of like a t-shirt, the cost of delivering that t-shirt is just like the cost of the t-shirt. There's like very little transactional cost involved because everything's kind of like automated, and or at least like relative to like a real world brick and mortar setup. So like LinkedIn, for example, you buy a premium subscription, it costs them like not even a fraction of a cent to deliver that value to you. So it's almost entirely profit. So because of this, they have like a lot of cash, but they do need economic inputs to build and maintain their products. And those economic inputs are brain time from engineers mostly, and you know, like the people who need to be there for the business to run, like salespeople, marketers, finance. Like, so talent is like the real input for most of the big tech companies. Where we're at right now, there is way more demand for qualified like tech talent than there's supply. It may feel like there is a glut, but in reality, the reason why wages are so high in the tech sector is because although, so let's actually go a little deeper into that. I think that it's very competitive getting into entry level roles, but the only reason why that's the case is because it's never been easier to apply for a job in history. Anyone with an internet connection can apply to be like a data scientist or a software engineer. That doesn't mean everyone's qualified.
Well, also, LinkedIn has a role in this. One click apply.
Yeah, it's a thing. So it's really easy, which kind of gives this like this facade of, oh, this is like a really competitive market and I have to get past the ATS. The ATS only exists because it's so easy to apply, and like, you know, no recruiter can actually go through all the responses. Right. So that's that's kind of like the idea I've come to settle around. And my own experience internally is like, you know, like there's always a need for more people. There's always a need for more headcounts, but the really like the qualified people that you can put in front of these like industrial scale problems are kind of few and far between. You have to really like look for needles in a haystack. And if you can, as a data analyst or like somebody trying to get into the industry, if you can figure out how to get yourself into a position where your skill level is like good enough to where you can be trusted with like managing just like like the technical infrastructure that's needed to run the apps that you use every day. It's way more complex than I think most people know unless they've actually seen the inside of it. So yeah, I think to go back into why people jump roles every 1 to 3 years. So in this environment, the tech companies have a lot of power over consumers, but behind that, the tech talent has a lot of power over the tech companies. And so they can demand like a lot of high wages, great perks. You see these things about like offices in the Bay Area, campuses with like, massages and like dentists on campus, and people have like daycare for the employees' kids. It's just because of this like power dynamic. They're like, don't leave us and go. We'll just make life so easy that all you do is figure out how to get more people to pay for premium subscriptions for us or whatever. And the reason why people jump is because they have the power to do it. It's some of the compensation is like truly outrageous in the big tech sector. And so, people are like, you put 50K in front of me, I'll jump,
Okay. So I have thoughts on this. I was going to take it in a completely different direction, but absolutely. I think that right now in the current climate, if you are talented, experienced, and effective, the world is your oyster. And not only jumping companies, but like you can just start your own thing. Like if you have talent, like I don't know, I don't want to come off as overly braggadocious, but my royalty is between LinkedIn and Udemy cover my cost of living. So I'm like 32 in this kind of semi-retired space. Which it's funny because I thought I would just go to like a beach in Mexico and be like, all right, I'm gonna just drink martinis and or margaritas or whatever and just hang out. Now I'm like, oh no, I'm freed up to do the work that I want to do, which is building this learning platform and like really get in on this. But yeah, so the skilled tech workers can go off and start their own like company.
Right.
Like they can build their own technology and then they own equity and then that pays them. Like there's a separation between me and my income now. Like the LinkedIn learning courses are doing all the leverage.
You're hitting the spot. So this is the key. You have an opportunity cost of working for a big tech company. They know that, which is why a lot of the just go, anyone on this podcast, go to levels.fyi and then, just click through. It'll show you for like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, like lots of companies, what people at different levels in tech make. And they make like ridiculous amounts of like stock. And the reason why these companies give so much stock to people is because it's to cover that opportunity cost, that like you can go and start, you can work anywhere else. So like we gotta give you some golden handcuffs. I think that's like kind of the mentality. But the thing is, because the companies are so competitive trying to compete for this limited pool of like really high skilled talent, Mark Zuckerberg, for instance, like routinely goes to universities like the top engineering schools and hires new grads with like 100K signing bonuses. They make a lot of cash and then they splash it and get people to work for them. In this environment, it's like no surprise people jump roles when they get a better opportunity. So hopefully that answers Kingo's question.
Okay. I also wanted to talk about it from like a power dynamics perspective of so in my own consulting agency, like I've told this anecdote enough where I guess I'm not as ashamed. Guess how much I started out with getting paid for. So I need to give you context. I turned my last internship into my during my MBA program into my first consulting client. So this ultimate irony that I've never had an analytics job, but yet I have a podcast called How to Get an Analytics Job. But guess how much I was getting paid at first when I first took on my consulting client. No benefits, no guarantee of like continued work. Guess what that hourly rate was?
I don't know. What, were you making over 50K?
Okay, so I was getting paid 30 an hour.
Oh, okay.
Which is like, well, it's funny because that seems like decent for like your first. I don't know. I did this weird thing where I learned the skill set and developed an agency at the same time, which like I'm realizing what a maniac I am because that's like generally not a wise thing to do. But it took me 3 months to negotiate from 30 to 32 to where the next client I got after that, I was making 100 an hour just because I could talk about the wins. So what you're doing, when you're staying in a job too long, you are competing against where you were when they found you. So my anchor point was an intern. So going from intern to consultant to high paid consultant is like nearly impossible. It's the switching cost of like talking about, that $350,000 under optimization. That's such an easy leverage point to just negotiate with my next client. So you can kind of do that within your job trajectory. You start fresh.
Yeah, I guess. Hold up. So someone asked, I really want to answer this question. Matt asked, is Aash drinking a stout? And the answer is no. It's 9:45 in the morning. This is coffee. I'm just drinking. It's cold brew. I poured it out of the can. The can had nitrogen in it. That's why it's foamy.
Yeah, it's got a head on it. Okay, all right. You're so attentive to the chat. I like get sucked in the conversation and like lose them. All right. So Raphael is asking, so if you have the skills to do the job that these tech companies pay such high wages, then you might as well open your own business. Interesting. What do you think? Agreed? Yes, no?
I mean, like, so we're, John, you and I are like on different sides of this question, right? Like, so you're basically in the role where you said, well, I'm doing like my own, not just business, but you've got like a couple of great gigs going on. And I'm kind of on this thing where, yeah, I mean, I think I have like the skills needed to like start my business. I'll have like a huge learning curve, but I've considered it. And for me right now, I think the opportunity cost is too high for me to kind of go off and do my own thing. But that's just me personally, but you're on the other side. So I'm curious how you feel about, the choice between, I don't know, let's say you had a choice between working at Google and getting paid like, I don't know, like absurd money, $300K, and then starting your own thing. Would you like, how seriously would you consider going to work at Google?
Okay, so I'm going to pivot. I'm going to dodge this question slightly.
Okay.
So, because I'll pit this in the real world. So Danny Lauer is a guy that I've known for probably going on 8 years now. We met way back. He was kind of like in a mentor role with me, where I went to him to get advice on whether I should go back and get an MBA, and he gave me some fantastic. He was getting an MBA at Wake Forest, and kind of was like he gave me some very, very strong advice in a critical point in my life. What's funny, I didn't realize that he kept up with me, and when he's now a senior product developer, or a senior, product manager at Amazon. And it's funny because he reached out to me and said, hey, my team's hiring. You're the first person I thought of to fill this analytics role. And what's funny is I was like, oh, I'm flattered. But I don't want to waste your time. I'm not interested in any type of full-time employment, but if you want to come on the podcast, we can talk. So he was a podcast guest. So no, I don't think that at this point, any amount of money could get me out of this position.
That's a really good answer. I mean, like, you clearly you see that there's you're getting a lot out of it, and there's enough potential for you to stick with your path.
Well, I mean, I'm just in such an interesting place where I feel like I am making an impact, like a real impact, and it's at scale. So like I can see it with my physical in-person students, but then like the amount of messages I get of like, I mean, this is a new thing that's like, I don't know how to wrap my head around this parasocial phenomenon. Like
what's that?
So, okay. So Matthew Cull recently found out about our podcast, saw the promo for one of our courses. Turns out he lives 5 minutes down the road. We went and grabbed a beer. And by the time, so this was like, I think it was like a week and a half overlap. He had listened to like 52 of my podcast episodes within like a week and a half. And then he would be like, okay, so in episode 13, around the like 25-minute mark, you made this really interesting point. And I agree with it, but I'm like, whoa, I don't know what to make of that. Like that is.
So he actually like got so much out of your podcast. He just listened to
he listened to
episodes. That's amazing, man. I mean, I think you're onto something there. I like ultimately the measure of how valuable the work you're doing is like the collective social impact of your work, right? Like I think,
right.
I think that's a really good measure of your your contribution to the people you work with and you associate with.
Yeah. Also, too, I need a caveat. What my answer with I'm essentially unemployable. Like I can't work for anyone else. It's like a switch gets turned off in my head when I get into like I did 2 corporate internships for my MBA, and I mean I was having that like existential dread every Sunday of like I can't believe I'm going to go into this. I've got to do my own thing, and I think part of it is just my personality type. Like I'm very, very high in novelty. Like I love like new things. Like it's funny because a lot of the people in this podcast value security and stability. So like it's been a real strong thought exercise of me like understanding them and like not trying to put my worldview on them and like actually listen. Because the idea of having like a 9-to-5 job and like slowly working up to like manager and then maybe middle manager and then maybe VP role just sounds like existentially dreadful to me. Like I just couldn't.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. I think I can relate pretty hard with that. I get existential dread on Sunday, and I'm also like I think I talked about this on Ken's podcast more, but I have my own like personality and like mental health challenges. I'm like very impulsive and just like I'm not even gonna. I'm just going to be straight with everyone. I'm like sweating from anxiety right now being on this call.
You're so good under pressure. Like you're very verbally fluent and articulate. I mean,
it's like years of practice. I used to work with some really senior like executives, and they would constantly be trying to like ask me to contribute, and I just got used to it. It's like trial by fire. But yeah, I mean, there's existential dread. I seriously like I have serious reservations about the work that I do every day. But like all said and done, I think I'm getting more out of it than I could anywhere else right now. And like maybe that'll change in the future, but for me right now, it's totally worth it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're going to circle around to, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile before we hopped on this call, and you were, you did some visualization work for Lime. You said that like got published, right?
Oh my God. That was so much fun. Yeah.
All right. So we've got a segment now. We're going to pivot into, so we're going to cut to a quick commercial break to announce this new LinkedIn challenge. It's going to be going on over the next 2 weeks for our learning platform. And then we're going to pull Abe Diaz on, and he is going to share his Tableau public. And you're going to give us some, I didn't prep you for this. I'm throwing you at this. He's going to share his LinkedIn or his Tableau public portfolio. And I want you to give some feedback.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. Let's do it.
All right. So, and what's funny is I just put together this challenge and lined everything up. So I'm excited to share this. So we're going to get to it right now.
I have an announcement. Between July 23rd and August 11th, we are going to be conducting a data visualization competition. You'll get to participate in this if you sign up for our marketing analytics case study course. So what we're going to do is have you compete for a chance to win a spot on the podcast. All you have to do is finish the course, post your visualization to LinkedIn, tag us in it, and you'll be entered in on this competition. So what are the benefits for you? Well, number one, you're going to build a killer analytics portfolio piece. Number two, if you tag us in it and we comment on your LinkedIn post, this is going to be a wide range of exposure for you. And then number three, if you win, you get to come on the podcast and have an expert review your work. So that's just hugely valuable just into itself. So Michael Galarnik is a true heavy hitter in the analytics space. He is published on LinkedIn, he's a lecturer at Stanford, and he is currently the head of developer relations at Anyscale. On August 13th, he is coming on our How to Get an Analytics Job live stream to review our finalists. Well, I realize you may be a little bit intimidated, but let me ease your anxiety a little bit. So what I'm going to be doing over the next 2 weeks is I'm going to be quite vigilant on checking my tags on LinkedIn. So if you come up with your first iteration of your dashboard, tag me in a LinkedIn post, and I will give you detailed feedback on what you're doing well and how you could even improve it further. And you can even tag me multiple times. I'm open to taking an iterative approach, because I think that's probably the best way to build out a really solid analytics portfolio. So all you have to do is tag us, post your work publicly, and you're going to be entered in this contest. And I can't wait to see the finalist results, because already we have Deepak and we have Abe Diaz who have taken this course and tagged me on multiple iterations of their dashboards, and they look fantastic. So if you're ready to beef up your personal brand in the analytics space, then join us in on this challenge. I dare you.
Player 3 has entered the chat. Abe Diaz, how are you? All right, so are you ready to do you have your Tableau public pulled up? You ready for this? Oh, let's see. What did you write in the chat here? It's time. Hailing from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, weighing in at 185, of Cuban-American muscle, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, MBA in finance, financial analyst, Abe the Marine Diaz. I wish I saw that sooner.
Oh, we're gonna have sound effects for this, you know. With
we need to have like we need to have wrestler gifts come in of like people like taking off their cape and like getting ready. Awesome. All right, so let's check it out. So explain, Abe, what's going on with this?
Oh, Abe, you're muted, by the way, dude.
Oh,
my bad. Yeah. So you guys didn't hear me, but I was going for like the whole Bruce Buffer UFC intro effect. I don't know if that landed well, but
you need to do the Vince McMahon walk.
Yeah. But so what we got here is the marketing case study from John David's course. So up top, I got the KPIs for Amazon, ad spend. I don't remember from the course if you had this in there. Then gross sales. This is the font's bigger than this. I just noticed. My bad. And then so I kind of added something different. So I kind of wanted to show both Amazon versus Facebook ROI over time. Okay. So I created a line chart, dual access. Yep. And then I synchronized the charts, I believe, or the axes. I'm sorry, to kind of show like how it's like increasing, decreasing over time. Instead of making another KPI for this, I kind of just took the color filter or the color display, however you want to call it, from the filter right here that is on. So I just took it from here and I decided to make it floating, so it's right there on the dashboard instead of making a whole nother KPI. And then down here, I just decided to make a couple quick bar charts showing their ad spend and their gross sales for the 3 months. The reason why the colors are a little bit different is I wanted kind of to match this as close to Amazon as possible, and then this one to Facebook. Not sure if that was like the best move, but I love that.
That's such a nuance.
Yeah, I just figured that would show a little bit more pop in there. But that's just awesome. Yeah, so that's just what I kind of did, and then I did the same. I tried to do the same thing in Power BI. If you want to see what I did in Power BI, you can go to my post on this and look at it. But yeah, so this is what I got so far. I'm ready for some burns and for some critiques and kind of make some changes live if possible, if you guys have any.
Yeah, I mean, I have like 10,000 thoughts about this already, but
all negative.
No, not at all. I want to start by Abe. Like, walk us through I guess who you think might be like how you think John might be using this and what kind of value he might get out of it.
All right, so it's a great question. So how John would use this, let's say John has this, let's say John was wanting to sell products or promote the podcast, right? So he would look at these two and be like, all right, which would be the best company to promote my podcast? I know you can't really do that on Amazon, but maybe you had products to sell.
Wait, let me
sell t-shirts, right, or something like.
Hold on, Abe, can you put in headphones? I think we're getting a little bit of feedback. Also, let's not use me as the end user. Let's use the actual case study. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, it was.
So, Abe, I mean, you've taken the course, so you know all this stuff. I'm not going to spoon feed it to you. you trial by fire. You gotta. Who was the end user for this?
Man, I honestly don't remember the course because I've been doing so much other stuff.
Oh, okay. All right. So
Yeah.
the end user is, so the company, the context is, and this is actually a use case built off of one of the student consulting projects from the Greensboro College Analytics Capstone course from last semester. The company of the president of this company is starting a new line of business. So they're traditionally, they've been around for 20, 30 years selling B2B. This is a new line developed targeting directly to consumers. And we have 3 months or 1 quarter's worth of data. Oh, that's a sweet photo. So we have 1 quarter's worth of data, and I mean, that's not a huge amount of data, but we're wanting to know as a 3-month sprint, quickly, is it Amazon or is it Facebook that's giving us a better return on investment for our ad spend? Actually, Ash, this is probably right up your alley. I don't know, because you're doing marketing analytics now.
Yeah, definitely in the line of work I'm currently in. So you mentioned B2B. So this is a B2B product, right?
No, so this is a e-commerce that is going directly to consumer.
Got it.
Also, we got Marina chiming in. Marina, so if you want to come be a judge, I mean, I'm sure Michael wouldn't mind sharing the judge responsibilities. So for those of you who don't know, Marina is she works at Amazon doing business intel or data engineering. So if you want to come in, I'm totally open to that. The offer's out there. All right, back to the task at hand. So what was the question?
Yeah. So just to recap, like who would use this? Like in the case study, the decision maker would want to understand whether to put money in Amazon or Facebook moving forward, and how much to put there potentially. So yeah, I think it's a good start. So you have ad spend on Facebook and Amazon. You have sales on Facebook and Amazon. You have some notion of ROI, which is I'm guessing sales divided by ad spend. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
That was very confident, yes.
The numbers on the top, are those for the entire quarter, or are they only for like 1 month?
They're overall, because at the bottom
Okay, so you got 3 months on the top. So I think yeah. So this is a really good start. What I think some follow-up questions I would have here are if this company is going to look at this and decide, so let's see, what's the takeaway we might get here, that Facebook has a higher ROI than Amazon, or at least had a higher ROI 2 out of 3 months.
So I would say like Facebook overall has a higher ROI. So it's they're about 100% higher return on investment than if you just used Amazon. And then your sales are obviously higher, and then you're spending less to get more. So versus Amazon. Okay.
Let's talk about what might happen next. So if I saw this, if I owned this business and I saw this and I said, all right, look, 2 out of 3 months, Facebook performed better than Amazon. January, they were like pretty close. Let's just kind of double down on Facebook, right? So the question is, if I put in another like $5,000 in Facebook, will the gross sales double to 32,000? So basically, if I double the Facebook budget, will my sales double? Is that a conclusion I can take away from here?
Probably not. No, that's something right. I should probably add in there. Yeah.
Right. So I guess while this is telling us kind of it's giving us kind of like a ballpark, right? But the key here is we don't know how many of those how many dollars from those sales are due to the ad spend. So we just know that we spent money and we got orders. But did those orders come from Facebook? And so this is an attribution problem, which in like in a real world scenario, I would recommend not making any decisions without looking into that kind of attribution. The way you do it is you like the data that you have you probably have a sales table and a spend table, right? And you're like, yeah, actually, let's take a look at the data.
Let's say, Abe, do you have the raw data file pulled up?
Awesome.
I will have to find it.
Cool. So you got, I mean, this is good enough. So you have 3 tables. You have ad spend as one table. You have Facebook revenue as one, and sales revenue from Amazon as one, right?
Right.
So yeah, you've connected these. Now, part of that connection that you might want to build, and I don't know if the case study data has this kind of thing, but you'll want to know at a row by row level which sale can be attributed to somebody clicking through or viewing a Facebook ad or an Amazon ad. That will give you a better measure of the true ROI.
Gotcha. So kind of just make it even more granular to see like what exact, because we could have these sales in these periods, but they can be from other things. So
that's right. So the question is, out of the $16,000 coming from Facebook, how many of those were actually because of the ads? Like if you remove the ads, how many would you still get like $10,000 in sales from Facebook?
All right. So Ash, here's the raw data file. So we essentially have 3 data sources. So we have ad spend all rolled into one. So we have our Amazon and our Facebook ads. Then we have our Facebook shop. So this is the product ordered, is the total sales, and then we have our Amazon seller data.
Got it.
So gross sales.
Okay. So yeah, this data set doesn't have like any way to figure out which sale came from like a click through on an ad or something like that. So I guess that's not possible with the data at hand. In the real world, we want to so if I saw this, I would kind of go, if I encountered the situation, I would I would get on the phone with engineers and ask them what it would take to get that kind of attribution. So to be able to connect the fact that the users who bought every order, did they ever click through an ad? Did they view an ad? And only consider those sales as part of the ROI calculation.
Right. So this is kind of. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, John David.
Yeah. So this is. I love that we're talking about this because so, how do you say your company's name? Atlassian?
It's Atlassian.
Atlassian.
Yeah.
So you guys have a very sophisticated infrastructure for your marketing analytics. So this company is doing just, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars in revenue or tens of millions in revenue. So they don't have that level of sophistication. So this is the data we're working with.
Brilliant. So let's think about how to do it like in a simpler way. Would you think this company might have like just some reports from Facebook and Amazon that tell you how many people saw an ad and clicked through from it? That could help you. Like if you added that information on the dashboard, I feel like it would give you like more context as to what percentage of that Facebook sales of 16,000 actually came from impressions or views on the ads themselves. Because ultimately, like the measure of ROI you have here is all the sales from Facebook, regardless of whether the user saw the ad or interacted. Right.
So it's not a true representation of how well did the ad did, and then it could be, well, which ad? Because you could have multiple. I don't know if there's like multiple ads or if you just consider all ads one.
Right. So let's think about this through like a mental model. Let's just use like a common conceptual model of like a funnel. So what happens when you put an ad on Facebook? You pay Facebook, your copy gets shown to people. So that's the first step. People see the ad, and industry standard for measuring that is impressions. It's a count of like unique people who saw the ad, and people would have to then click through the ad, go on your landing page, add something to their cart, check out, and then you can say like that order is from Facebook, like from a Facebook ad. If they only did some of this, then maybe your ad contributed partially to it. So what you have here is all the people who bought who bought items from Facebook, if you can like identify what percentage of that you think came from people who actually clicked the ad, that's like a really like your true measure of ROI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is just assuming that all of this but in the real world, you wouldn't just assume.
Yeah. So this would be like part of so I think it's a decent assumption to make. Let's go into like the actual, the visualization itself. I think the layout's really good. You have summary on the top, you have some detailed charts at the bottom. I think the most important metric here is actually the second one. It's the ROI. The reason for that is, let's say you build a chart, you update it next month, right? And you want to see, you want to understand whether the dynamics of your marketing campaigns are changing. If you only saw the gross sales and the ad spend, you only have like a limited idea of why your ROI is moving. Because think about it, if the ROI changes, it could be because the sales went up or the sales went down, or the ad spend went up or the ad spend went down, or maybe Facebook's algorithms got better, and you just get like organically better ROI from every dollar you spend. So in order to track a signal for those to change, that's where the middle chart is really important. So if anything changes in your marketing environment, that's the metric that will give you a signal that something is definitely changed or very likely changed.
Okay, Ash, I've got some questions from like the content creation standpoint. What's funny is that I knew you were a senior data scientist. I didn't realize you were specializing in marketing analytics. So like I'm literally asking a marketing analytics expert these questions, which is, I couldn't plan this better. Should I caveat like this data set, for example, like the Facebook stuff? So what we could say is that 100% of Amazon sales are attributed to ads. And then we could say we have an estimation that 80% of the Facebook sales are attributed to ads. 20% came from social media.
You could do that, or actually, I think to make this an even better case study, you could add a third. In addition to the sales for Facebook and sales for Amazon, very commonly these platforms give you downloads of reports that like on this day, this is how much you spent, and this is how many people viewed an ad, and this is how many people clicked an ad. I think you can just run some test campaigns on Facebook, download the data, and build a couple of new data sets that just have like impressions and clicks. If you add that to your dashboard, it's like way more informative in terms of like strategy.
Okay. What if I just added a new tab called attribution, and I could say on this Facebook tab, I could say social or ad.
Oh, true. Yeah. That's another option. So if you have attribution, that's like the ideal way to do it, because then you can go order by order and check whether it came from a person who clicked on the ad.
So you guys are seeing behind the curtain here, but no, that's a really good point. And that just adds another layer of sophistication to the case study. So that's fantastic.
And just to go into like some real world marketing analytics here, attribution is really hard to build. So it's very expensive to build. It takes engineering resources, takes a lot of care. There's a lot of, because third-party services are involved, it's a lot of like assumptions you have to make that might not hold. So another way to get this kind of like more accurate impact of how many dollars of your spend actually contributed to dollars in revenue, like another approach is to use something called a measured rollout. So when you do your ad campaign, you run it like an A/B test basically, and you look at the outcomes for treatment and from control, and you use you like measure the difference in sales between those two groups to get some idea of what the incremental impact of a dollar spent on marketing is. Like really is.
Interesting. Okay. Well, what's wild is that using just these three data sources, that was strong enough of an indication to give this business owner a read on what to do next.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely
like explore Facebook is like the takeaway. Like,
Right.
I don't understand why it's performing better, and how you can use that to your advantage.
Well, because what I'm thinking of, like, this is essentially the first sprint, and we're getting a read on the situation. So, and it's an iterative approach. So you do a sprint, and you do another sprint, and you do another sprint, and then you constantly get an iterative feedback on it. So this sprint 1 is saying that Facebook. So we're going to test. All right, maybe in the next iteration is that we'll do twice as much invested in Facebook and Amazon, and then see if that. Because you're right. I mean, for ad spend, like, you're going to hit a point of diminishing returns. So maybe that's tapped out. But I mean, part of this is like, this is just a great conduit to have these conversations that I think are not typically being had within a classroom.
Yeah. So before you, I think when I was learning, this, like, how to build dashboards and stuff, I was really focused on like what specific charts to use, and like, how to make it really informative at a glance. But like, I think like over a few years of experience in the industry, I'm starting to kind of revisit my methodology, and like, before even putting any charts on the dashboard, really like ask these questions, because ultimately it saves you like weeks of iteration if you kind of like start out with a good conceptual model.
So how would you input the social or the attribute in a dashboard? Like, how would you put that in there, or incorporate this into telling the end user, where exactly their ads came from?
So like, probably the simplest way is if you when you advertise on these platforms, you get like some reports on how those ads perform. I would recommend taking those reports and just adding like impressions and clicks during the same period. So, just like you have January, February, March spend and sales, like, actually talk about what that spend got you. How many people saw it? How many people clicked through from it? That will tell you, like, how many people your ads directly brought into your site. And in addition to the gross sales, if you actually put down like how many customers made those sales, so then you can compare those two customer numbers, like how many people clicked through your ads, how many people actually bought from those channels, and that.
Hey, Ash, I can make this very this is a complex question. Abe, pull up your Tableau dashboard.
My Tableau is asking me to find all my data sources, and there's no time for that. So I'm just gonna edit it. I'm just gonna edit it in here. So what about, like, real quick? What about like cost per clicks? Putting that in there, is that something to consider or important?
Yeah. So cost per click is something to consider here. I would. So now we're talking about like building off of this into like what we might add next. And so definitely like impression rate, click-through rate, that kind of thing is like really key. Cost per click is important. It's more important for if you're trying to optimize the lifetime value of the users you acquire from these platforms. So while it's relevant here, I think it's more important for the discussion of, are we paying too much for compared to what each user is buying from us. So it's more of like a P&L, profit and loss problem. And yeah, it's related. I would put it in like a future sprint if you were developing this dashboard.
All right. So Abe, I'm going to answer your question that you had. So what you're going to have to do is, now that we're adding in this new attribution column here, if you recall in the case study, you had to isolate all of the Amazon advertising. You had to pull that out of a column and make that its own separate value. So you did that through this calculation right here within Tableau. Why is it not letting it? There it goes. Man, that's going slow. So do you remember this if-then statement?
Yep, I remember doing that.
So what you're gonna have to do is just create another if-then statement that looks at Facebook. So you're gonna have to take the social out. So you could say value is equal to product order sales if attribution is equal to ad. So that's how you're going to. Oh, looks like Ash got kicked off.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, folks. I'm back.
Welcome back. So that's, you're gonna have to build an if then statement and pull out the social media. Ash, I love that we talked about this, and this totally wasn't none of this was planned because both my social media manager and my intern, I don't know if they're on here, bailed last minute. So this is a happy little Bob Ross accident. I like this. This adds a level of sophistication to the case study.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is literally what I do every day is, stare at other people's spreadsheets on Zoom calls or like Tableau dashboards, and we look for each other. We like this is the kind of conversation I have with my data science and analytics teammates. Like, are we
perfect?
Do we have all the columns we need? Do we put everything on there? Like, can we trust this?
You know what? And I'm like trying to fabricate the backstory of this, which is kind of what I like. It's almost like historical fiction with these case studies of like, I can't give you the exact data that the client had. I can't give you I have to anonymize it and then make it like a little bit interesting and unique and different from the real world. So what we could say is that, okay, we can calculate attribution for social media by saying they entered in a specific promo code at checkout.
Oh yeah.
So attribution doesn't have to be necessarily super complex. Like that's a relatively
like multiple types of attribution. The one you suggested is really good, where like the ad mentions a coupon code, and then the people who use that coupon code can be tracked. Like there's still an edge case there where basically you can click through the ad and buy something without using the coupon code, and like you basically, unless you measure, you don't know how big or small that edge case is.
Right. So this is a small enough company that like we're gonna have to make those assumptions. We don't have the data engineering team to like put resources behind that.
And that's fair. At that point, you're like, okay, like we got too deep in. Let's just kind of paper over the reality with some assumptions and go for it.
Right. Well, because it's like you get to this point where it's like we have to make a strategic decision. And it's not perfect, and you don't know every single variable. But if this is a good enough signal to say, all right, this is what we're doing moving forward, it's better than nothing.
It's definitely better than nothing. So yeah. I want to be clear, like where I'm coming from these questions, like purely academic. I'm like,
Okay.
think about everything right now. In the real world, like we would not try to build any of this unless it really gives us like, I don't know, like hundreds of thousands of dollars in value, like $1 million in value. I don't know. It totally depends on what the other opportunities you have are.
Right.
Yeah. So there's kind of like an impact at scale. Like these things can really like add up. So that's kind of why I'm like, just completely just like trained to think about all the edge cases now. But yeah, that's kind of my big corp industry perspective.
Right. As the bootstrappy entrepreneur here, I'm saying we're gonna do the attribution by saying if they entered in promo code Abe, what was it? What was your wrestling name?
I was like Abe the Data Marine Diaz. So
Abe the Data Marine Diaz. Then that is a social media attribution. I mean, isn't this fun that we're like building out this case study in real time? Like, I mean, the core of it's there, but like this is a conduit to have a whole conversation about attribution now. And I'm just going to tack this on the end of the case study to like give another iteration of it.
This is a really good case study. I feel like you can talk about a lot of different topics with this. It's it's broad and it has a lot of scope for growing.
Well, what's funny is that I'm literally adding in like these I'll probably take a snippet from this podcast live stream and add that into the course to say, all right, here's how a true marketing analytics data scientist would look at this. And then maybe you like the way that you're describing attribution, I can just like throw that in the course because it's relevant.
Go for it.
Well, because I guess also too, I wanted to ask you, are you interested in doing a guest lecture sometime next semester?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah. I mean, it totally depends on the topic. I'm happy to contribute in areas that I'm, like confident with, but yeah.
So I think next semester I'm going to have the students creating some ad campaigns for the learning platform. So I'd love to have like a true marketing analytics expert come in and like talk about it. So that could be fun.
I'm still learning too. It's my first like marketing analytics gig. I've been in like product analytics and kind of like field ops related stuff before, but I found that like working with students and teaching really helps me kind of like sharpen what I'm learning too. So happy to do it.
Well, it's funny because the teaching thing, it feels almost like philanthropic / it's like my passion project. It's just fun. I get to like interact with, and these students are so impressionable. It's so wild to see like, especially because I think most of their professors are super boring. So I'm trying to make like engaging content that's like new and introduce them to like, are you familiar with like what we did last semester?
I'm not.
So what we did last semester for the capstone course is that I paired the students to two of my clients, and they did real world projects. We met on Mondays to like work on those as like a group effort, and then Wednesdays we did a podcast episode where we had like Danny Lauer from Amazon talk about like what he looks for when he's hiring analysts for his team, and then they got to do like an interactive segment, kind of like this, like what you did with Abe, where you like.
Cool. This is fun. I feel like for me this is really like. If I wasn't on this call, this is probably what I'd be doing at work. So, like, I think it's a really good exercise and very representative of the kind of conversations you might have in the workplace. Really
awesome. Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, like, it feels like low pressure. Like Abe doesn't seem like he's sweating bullets too bad.
Yeah.
So. Cool.
It's very helpful, and I do appreciate it. This is it helps everyone learn, and hopefully other people aren't scared to get be asked to come on a podcast at the last second. And,
I think my point here is probably like the biggest takeaway I would ask anybody to take from this discussion is you have data, you're building a dashboard, but the thing is, do you want to measure what you need to, or what you have, or what you can? And there's an intersection. But most of the time, you may, or a lot of the time, you probably are not able to measure what you need to. And the struggle is trying to figure out how to build up to that point. So like all the approximations are great. I think like for a lot of use cases, making assumptions, approximations are great. And it's perfectly acceptable to do it, but like the more your use cases scale, the more these like weird edge cases and kind of like logical outcomes that you may assume are like rare, they may actually be more common than you thought, or even if they're rare, they could be expensive when they come up. So there's a lot of things to think about.
Yeah. What's funny is like now my mind is like creatively brainstorming of like, oh, well, we can track attribution for each of these ad campaigns by a specific, we can say like summer sale or winter sale or spring sale or whatever. And then we can have that attribution. Here, let me add this to the stream. So like,
you know what? I think so going just jamming off of that, I think what you could do is you could say that at least one of the campaigns was for a specific product that's only offered through that campaign, right? So like the only way somebody buys that product is by clicking through that campaign. So this also gives you like kind of an imperfect data example to share with students where if you have attribution for some campaigns but not all campaigns, how would you present this information? And it really like gives you a real type of
yeah. I like that. Cool. Well, we just made a case study.
You exclude stuff from this perfect data set, and that kind of gives you like, oh, you know what? Like we don't know what's really happening here.
Cool. Well, this was fun. Totally spontaneous too. It's funny how we can just like iterate and like incorporate people's questions from chat and stuff like that. Because what we did in the last live stream, where me and Al are reviewing the Google Analytics certification program with Coursera, is we brought up this case study, raw data file, and we're looking at the data quality issues because that was like relevant to what they were talking about. So it's like, I'm trying. Well, I think part of what's missing in the education space is like seeing real world, like relevant applications of concepts. Like it just seems like high level theory in a lot of situations.
It does, yeah. Until until you get burned by it. I feel like a lot of questions that I went into today. I know it's not the direction that you probably originally envisioned, but it's it's basically coming from just experience of having needed to ask those questions.
Well, I mean, I feel like, all right, I'm gonna bring this back full circle to like this concept I mentioned at like the very start of like this like servant leadership. Like this is kind of a meta thing. We're demonstrating what a good client meeting would be like, or a good meeting with your manager, where it's like you don't know what's going on. You don't like if you come into solving a problem with a fixed outcome, or like this is how it's going to be, then you're probably going to be wrong, because it's like it's about your ego and your assumptions, instead of like figuring out like, okay, where are you at, what's going on, and then like creatively problem solving.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I would go as far as to say that the conversation we had is probably like pretty close to, like the like case study interviews you get for data science. I feel like if you wind up having a conversation that's maybe not as in depth as we had just now, but like kind of along the same lines, considering things that are not necessarily in the scope of the stated problem, but like really, really relevant and will come into play like in future iterations of the same discussion. I feel like if you have this kind of discussion with your interviewer, you're like solid. This is the objective. They're trying to see whether they can work with you at this kind of like uncertain problem environment.
Yeah. Cool. Abe, I'm glad that you were part of this conversation.
Yeah, me too. No, this was legit.
Awesome. Well, it's 1:30, so I think we should kind of wrap things up. Aash, where can people find you? What's the best way for them to reach out to you, or if you want them to?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. I got tagged in John David's post. So if you have him on LinkedIn, go find me, and I will just I'm not on like a lot of social media platforms, but I'm around. So I'm happy to help people with interview prep, resume review, any of that kind of stuff. Feel free to hit me up.
Awesome. Well, Aash, it was a pleasure meeting you, and thank you for spending like so much time and also like your creative energy on this. This was a blast.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, I'll see you guys later. Also, chat, thanks for tuning in. See ya.
In this case study course, you're going to learn 3 things. Number 1, you're going to improve your business acumen. This means that you're going to learn about how business works. Then we're going to move into the second point, which is analytics hard skills. So once we understand how the business works, we're then going to use some business intelligence tools, specifically Tableau, to solve the business problem and uncover insights. And then the third point, which is very, very important, are the soft skills. And the whole last chapter is dedicated to how you can more effectively explain your findings and also talk about past projects in an interview setting. To be a little bit more specific, you're going to be calculating the return on investment of 2 different marketing channels. So we're going to be looking at our Amazon and our Facebook ad spend. And there are 3 different data sources. So our first data source is our cost data source. And this is where we can see all of the ad spend, and it's in one data source. Then there is a sales data source for Facebook and a sales data source for Amazon. The challenge is that we're going to have to combine all 3 of these data sources together and then isolate our spending data and associate it with the relevant sales data source. By the end of the project, you're going to figure out which of these has the highest return on investment. But you're also going to have a challenge where you're going to visualize the data and see if there are any insightful trends that you could communicate to our end client. So if you're up for a challenge, then sign up and let's get started.